What I'm about to show you is going to upset a lot of people who think high blood pressure begins and ends with a prescription bottle. Because if your numbers have been creeping up and you've been told your only real option is to keep increasing pills for the rest of your life, there's a part of that story you haven't been told. And when I reveal herb number 1, the one with research so surprising it has gone head-to-head with medication in published studies, you're going to understand why some seniors feel trapped, over-medicated, exhausted, and still no closer to the real cause of their rising pressure. I'm Dr. Sarah J. Miller, and before we go one step further, I need to make something crystal clear. Because this could protect you from making a dangerous mistake. This video is not permission to throw away prescribed medication. It is not a dare. It is not a shortcut. It is a roadmap. Please subscribe right now, support this channel, and join our community so more seniors can get clear, life-saving health guidance. Because when people understand how pressure is actually influenced inside the body, they stop acting out of fear and start making decisions that are calmer, smarter, and much more effective. Let me tell you about Norman, because his story explains why this conversation matters so much. Norman was 72, retired, disciplined, the kind of man who never missed a dose of anything. His blood pressure started climbing, so his medication was increased. Then it was increased again. Then another pill was added. But instead of feeling safer, he felt drained. His legs were heavy. He got dizzy when he stood up. He stopped walking as much. He lost confidence in his body. What no one had really explained to him was that blood pressure isn't just a drug problem. It's a circulation problem, an artery problem, an inflammation problem, a stress problem, and sometimes even a food and plant chemistry problem. And that's why the title of this video matters. When I say these herbs lower high blood pressure better than pills, I do not mean they replace emergency care or that they outperform every medication in every person. I mean they often work through broader pathways that support the body instead of simply forcing one lever. Some help the arteries relax, some improve nitric oxide signaling, some help reduce oxidative stress, some influence fluid balance, some make healthy meals easier to stick with. And by the end of this video, you'll know the 7 most promising ones. Which one deserves the number 1 spot and the 3 rules that determine whether herbs help you at all or just give you false hope. Before we start the countdown, I need to give you one non-negotiable rule. If you already take blood pressure medicine, blood thinners, diabetes medicine, or you have kidney disease, do not add concentrated herbal supplements casually. Natural does not mean weak. Natural does not mean side effect free. Natural does not mean safe to combine without supervision. Some of these plants can nudge pressure down. That's the whole point. But if your body is already being pushed downward by medication, stacking the wrong things can leave you lightheaded, unstable, and at real risk of falling. So use this video as education, use it as strategy, and use it as a better conversation with your doctor, not as rebellion. Now let's begin with herb number 7, because this one surprises almost everybody. Cinnamon. Yes, cinnamon. The spice many people only think about around holidays, oatmeal, or dessert. May have a modest but meaningful effect on blood pressure in the right setting. And the reason it deserves a place on this list is not because it's dramatic on day 1. It deserves a place because it's easy to live with. Let me tell you about Gloria, 69, who started every morning with sweet coffee, toast, and that mid-morning crash that left her snacking on whatever was closest. Her blood pressure wasn't terrifying, but it kept hovering too high, just enough to keep her worried. When Gloria changed nothing except how she flavored and built her meals, something interesting happened. She began using cinnamon in plain yogurt, steel-cut oats, and unsweetened tea. That shift helped her cut back on sugar-heavy foods that were driving weight gain and energy swings. And cinnamon itself may be doing more than adding flavor. It appears to modestly improve blood pressure in some adults, especially when used consistently over weeks rather than randomly here and there. This is important because one of the great traps in senior health is expecting a plant to behave like an emergency drug. That's not how most of these work. They work like gentle pressure on the system, repeated over time. Here's why cinnamon earns respect. It seems to help with vascular function and metabolic stress, and those two problems often travel together. If your body is wrestling with blood sugar swings, abdominal weight, and stiffening arteries, that combination can keep pressure elevated even when you think you're eating reasonably well. Cinnamon may be especially helpful when it's part of a pattern that lowers sugar intake and improves meal quality. But there's a caution here. More is not better. Dumping huge amounts into supplements or taking mystery capsules online is not the strategy. Use culinary amounts first, choose quality, and think of cinnamon as a quiet daily ally, not a miracle. Because herb number 6 gets a little more aggressive. Herb number 6 is ginger, and if you've ever felt warmth spread through your body after ginger tea, you've already felt a clue about why this plant matters. Let me tell you about Harold, 74, who used to wake up stiff, sluggish, and swollen through the fingers. His pressure was highest in the morning, not crisis high but consistently elevated. He assumed it was just aging. But aging is often blamed for things that are really patterns of inflammation, inactivity, fluid imbalance, and vascular tension. Harold began drinking ginger tea in the afternoon and cooking with fresh ginger several times a week. That wasn't the only change he made, but it became part of the routine that made the rest of the routine stick. Ginger is fascinating because it may support lower blood pressure through multiple pathways at once. It appears to help blood vessels relax, and there's also evidence it may modestly reduce both systolic and diastolic pressure in some adults, especially when used in sufficient amounts over enough time. That matters because many people give up too early. They try something for 4 days, see nothing, and call it useless. Blood pressure didn't rise in 4 days, and it rarely settles in 4 days either. Ginger also has a practical advantage. It can replace some of the salty, heavy flavoring people lean on without thinking. When a plant helps your arteries directly and your eating habits indirectly, that's when results start to compound. But I need to warn you about one thing with ginger because this is where people get careless. If you're on blood thinners, or you bruise easily, or you're taking multiple cardiovascular medications, concentrated ginger products are not something to stack thoughtlessly. Food use is one thing. High-dose supplementation is something else entirely. And that distinction matters with every herb in this video. The older we get, the more likely we are to be taking something that changes clotting, kidney filtration, blood sugar, or heart rhythm. So yes, ginger deserves its place. But if cinnamon was the gentle nudge, ginger is the plant that reminds us these remedies are real enough to demand respect. And number 5 is even more overlooked. Herb number 5 is cardamom. Now this one rarely makes the headlines, which is exactly why I wanted it in this video. Most people walk right past it in the spice aisle and never imagine it belongs in a blood pressure conversation. But cardamom has shown something very interesting in people with stage 1 hypertension. Let me tell you about Eleanor, 67, who loved sweet pastries, but never really learned to enjoy unsweetened tea or plain foods. Everything healthy tasted flat to her. So every heart-healthy plan she tried lasted maybe 5 days. Then she started using crushed cardamom in tea, oatmeal, lentils, and warm milk at night. Suddenly, the healthier version of her meals stopped feeling like punishment. That matters more than people realize. One of the hidden reasons blood pressure stays high is not just biology, it's adherence. If your food feels joyless, you will go back to the salt shaker, the processed snacks, the comfort foods, and the nightly overeating that keep pressure climbing. Cardamom has been studied in adults with stage 1 hypertension, and over several weeks, researchers observed notable reductions in blood pressure. That does not make it a magic bullet, but it does make it far more serious than most people think. It may support vessel relaxation, antioxidant defenses, and overall circulatory ease. And when you combine a physiologic effect with better meal satisfaction, the plant starts pulling more than one lever at the same time. Cardamom also teaches a bigger lesson. Some herbs lower pressure not because they smash it down, but because they create a body environment where high pressure becomes harder to maintain. Less oxidative stress, better vascular responsiveness, calmer digestion, better compliance with healthy eating, even a slightly more relaxed nervous system after meals. Those things matter. For some seniors, especially those whose pressure rises with stress and poor eating patterns, that kind of layered support can be more sustainable than chasing stronger and stronger medication while the daily routine never changes. Still, I'm only warming you up, because herb number 4 starts to sound more medicinal, and the evidence gets harder to ignore. Herb number 4 is black cumin, also called Nigella sativa. If you've never heard of it, don't feel bad, because a lot of people haven't. But this is one of those plants that quietly built a scientific file while the public was paying attention elsewhere. Let me tell you about Samuel, 71, who was doing what many seniors do. He was trying to be healthy, which usually meant making good decisions sometimes and old decisions whenever he got tired or stressed. His pressure wasn't terrible, but it was stubborn. He wanted something that felt natural without being meaningless. When he learned about black cumin, what caught his attention wasn't hype. It was the fact that studies kept showing modest, repeatable downward movement in blood pressure. And that phrase, modest but repeatable, is more powerful than it sounds. Blood pressure is not one number. It is a pattern. If a plant can bring systolic down a few points and diastolic down a few points, and do it consistently, that can matter a great deal over months and years. Black cumin appears to help through antioxidant action, inflammation control, and effects on vascular tone. It is not the strongest herb on this list, but it belongs here because it appears to move pressure in the right direction without needing theatrical claims. And frankly, when you've practiced medicine long enough, you stop being impressed by drama and start paying attention to what quietly works. Now here's the danger with black cumin and with many supplements like it. People hear seed, ancient remedy, or traditional medicine, and they imagine safety is automatic. It isn't, especially not in concentrated oil or capsule form. If you already run low sometimes, if you take multiple drugs, if your kidney function is reduced, if your blood sugar tends to dip, you cannot treat these compounds like seasoning. The plant may help. That's why it's on this list. But help and harmless are not the same word. And that is what brings us to herb number 3, the one that often shocks people because it sounds almost too ordinary to take seriously: celery seed. Herb number 3 is celery seed, and I need you to forget the limp celery stalk on a party tray for a moment. Because that is not the point here. Celery seed has been studied in people with hypertension, and the findings are serious enough that it deserves your attention. Let me tell you about Patricia, 73, who assumed her blood pressure was only a salt problem. She stopped salting her eggs, stopped salting her soup, and figured she had done enough. But processed foods, canned foods, sauces, packaged breads, deli meats, all of it was still flooding her system. When she finally began rebuilding meals from the ground up, celery seed became one of the flavors that made lower sodium food feel rich instead of bland. And that matters, because one of the cruelest ironies in blood pressure care is that people are told to eat healthier without being shown how to make healthy food enjoyable enough to repeat tomorrow. Celery seed doesn't just bring flavor. It has compounds that appear to support blood pressure reduction, and clinical research has shown encouraging improvements in both systolic and diastolic readings over weeks. Think about that. A plant that helps make low-sodium food more satisfying while also appearing to help pressure directly. That's exactly the kind of double action I look for. Not an herb that lives in a fantasy world, but one that changes the biology and the behavior at the same time. Still, celery seed comes with a reminder I want burned into your mind. Never confuse more natural with more casual. If you have kidney issues, take diuretics, or already struggle with hydration and dizziness, You need to be careful. Blood pressure support is helpful right up until it becomes pressure that's too low for your body to tolerate safely. And this is where the countdown gets really serious because the top two herbs do something different. They don't just sit politely in the background. They have enough evidence, enough physiologic punch, and enough real-world relevance to make seniors say, "Why did nobody explain this to me sooner?" Before I reveal number 2, I need to tell you something that most people never hear in the doctor's office. Pills are often necessary. I prescribe them. They save lives. But pills can create an illusion, especially when they are used without fixing the environment that created the pressure in the first place. The illusion is this. If the number on the monitor drops, the problem is solved. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes the arteries are still inflamed. Sometimes the sodium load is still too high. Sometimes sleep apnea is still untreated. Sometimes stress is still hammering the nervous system every night. And sometimes the body is begging for broader support than one pharmaceutical lever can provide. That is why herb number 2 is garlic. Yes, garlic. Not because old folk stories said so. Not because your neighbor swears by it. Because when garlic has been studied, it has repeatedly shown an ability to lower blood pressure, especially in people whose pressure is already elevated. Let me tell you about Robert, 76, who hated the idea of health food, but loved food that actually tasted like something. He was trying to cut back on sodium, but everything seemed flat and disappointing. So he reached for canned sauces and salty seasoning blends just to make meals tolerable. Once he began using garlic aggressively in cooking, something changed. Suddenly, vegetables became satisfying. Beans became satisfying. Fish became satisfying. He could finally stay with the plan, and here's why that matters. Garlic seems to support blood pressure directly by helping blood vessels relax, and there is evidence it may work through nitric oxide and sulfur-related pathways that improve vascular function, which is a fancy way of saying your arteries may behave more like flexible living tissue and less like rigid tubing. Some analyses have found that garlic supplementation lowers blood pressure more clearly in hypertensive adults than in people whose numbers are already normal. That's exactly what you would hope to see. A meaningful effect where the problem actually exists. Not hype sprayed everywhere, but targeted benefit where it's needed most. That is the difference between real evidence and nutritional folklore. But garlic also illustrates the biggest difference between food medicine and pill thinking. A pill asks one question: how do we push this number down? Garlic asks several: how do we improve flavor without salt? How do we support vessel relaxation? How do we make healthy eating repeatable? How do we reduce the need for ultra-processed foods, and the inflammation they bring? That broader reach is what makes it feel better than pills to so many people, even when I would never tell someone to abandon medication blindly. There is one more caution, though. Garlic can interact with clotting. If you are on blood thinners or heading into surgery, concentrated garlic products are not something to improvise with. And now we've arrived at herb number 1, the plant that makes people lean closer to the screen because it sounds almost too simple to be real. It isn't hidden in some exotic mountain range. It isn't locked behind a supplement company paywall, and it doesn't need a futuristic marketing campaign. Herb number 1 is hibiscus. And if you're thinking, a tea? That's the big reveal? Stay with me, because this is where the story changes. Let me tell you about Martha, 70, whose blood pressure had become the soundtrack of her life. Morning reading? Worry. Afternoon reading? More worry. Evening reading? Frustration. She wasn't in immediate danger, but she was living under a constant cloud of tension. Martha did what many people do. She kept searching for the one perfect answer while ignoring the small, repeatable habits that actually shape blood pressure day after day. Then she started drinking hibiscus tea regularly, not randomly, not once every 2 weeks, but as part of a real routine. What got my attention is that hibiscus hasn't just been admired in traditional use. It has been studied And the findings are strong enough that this plant keeps resurfacing whenever scientists look seriously at natural blood pressure support. In some analyses, hibiscus has lowered systolic pressure by several meaningful points compared with placebo, and in certain comparisons, it has performed surprisingly close to medication-level results. That does not mean you can swap your prescription for a teacup and call it medicine. Please do not hear that. What it means is far more interesting. It means the body can respond powerfully to certain plant compounds when they are used consistently and in the right context, especially if the person actually has elevated pressure to begin with. Hibiscus appears to help blood vessels relax and may support healthier nitric oxide signaling. Some people use it once and expect fireworks. That misses the point. Hibiscus is not impressive because it is flashy. It is impressive because it keeps showing up in the research with effects that are hard to dismiss and easy to build into everyday life. And here is why I ranked hibiscus above garlic. Garlic is brilliant in the kitchen and helpful in the body. But hibiscus has something seniors need desperately: simplicity. You can build a routine around it. You can measure it. You can repeat it. You can notice whether your numbers move after weeks of steady use, not emotional use. And that word steady is everything. 1 cup after a salty restaurant meal is not a blood pressure strategy. A daily pattern is, for some people that means 1 cup with meals. For others, it may be a stronger morning brew. The point is not perfection. The point is consistency, because the circulation system responds to repeated inputs more than heroic one-day efforts. But now I need to tell you the part most videos leave out, and this may be the most important part of everything you've heard today. Herbs do not rescue a chaotic lifestyle. They do not erase heavy sodium intake. They do not fix 6 hours of broken sleep. They do not overpower chronic stress, alcohol excess, weight gain, inactivity, and processed foods, all pulling in the wrong direction at the same time. If you treat herbs like decorative insurance while everything else keeps driving pressure upward, you will be disappointed. Worse, you may blame the plant when the real problem was the environment. The herb did not fail. The system around it drowned out its effect. So let me give you the first rule that determines whether these herbs help or don't. Rule number 1, they work best when you stop flooding your body with hidden sodium. That means not just putting down the salt shaker. It means looking at bread, soup, frozen meals, sauces, deli meat, chips, restaurant food, canned pasta, seasoning packets, and all the polite little sodium bombs seniors forget to count. Because they aren't tasting obvious salt. If you lower sodium and then use plants like garlic, cardamom, ginger, hibiscus, and celery seed to make food exciting again, you create something powerful. You remove the force driving pressure upward while adding forces that support pressure downward. That is how smart, lasting change happens. Rule number 2, never test an herb emotionally. Test it systematically. I want you to hear that. People try a tea during a stressful week, take one random blood pressure reading, and decide the plant is useless or miraculous based on that single moment. That is not data, that is mood. If you want to know whether a herb is helping, keep your measurement routine stable. Check at the same times, sit quietly first. Write the numbers down. Track 2 weeks, then 4. Watch trends, not isolated spikes. Because blood pressure moves with sleep, stress, pain, hydration, meals, and even your bladder. Adults make terrible decisions when they react to one scary number instead of the pattern under it. Rule number 3, do not stack everything at once. This is another common mistake. A senior watches a video like this, orders 6 supplements online, starts all of them Monday morning, and by Thursday feels dizzy, bloated, or nauseated, and has no idea what caused it. That is not healing. That is chaos. And chaos is how good remedies get blamed unfairly. Choose one approach. Maybe garlic in food every day. Maybe hibiscus tea consistently. Maybe ginger built into meals and tea. Give it time. Watch your numbers. Notice your symptoms. Then adjust intelligently. The body likes clear signals. It does not like being hit from 7 directions, while medications, hydration, and meal patterns are all changing too. Now let's talk honestly about the phrase better than pills, because I know some of you are still thinking about it. Better does not always mean stronger in the emergency sense. If your pressure is dangerously high, a pill can save your life in a way no kitchen remedy can. But better can mean broader. Better can mean gentler. Better can mean supporting the vessel wall, the meal pattern, the inflammatory load, the fluid balance, and the nervous system all at once, instead of forcing one doorway and leaving the rest untouched. Better can mean fewer side effects for the right person. Better can mean feeling like your body is being supported, not just chemically cornered into compliance. And sometimes, if we're being brutally honest, better can mean something emotionally important too. Seniors get tired of feeling managed, tired of feeling like their role is to swallow, obey, and wait for the next dosage adjustment. Plants like hibiscus and garlic restore a sense of participation. They let people do something daily that feels nourishing instead of punitive, and that psychological shift matters. A person who feels engaged is more likely to walk, sleep better, measure consistently, eat more thoughtfully, and stick with the plan long enough to actually see improvement. You cannot separate biology from behavior. In real life, the best treatment is the treatment a person can continue with clarity and confidence. Now I need to add one warning that may protect someone watching this tonight. If your blood pressure is severely elevated, if you have chest pain, sudden weakness, slurred speech, severe headache, confusion, shortness of breath, or vision changes, do not make tea. Do not search supplement reviews. Do not wait and see if it comes down naturally. That is not the moment for herbs. That is the moment for immediate medical care. Natural support belongs in long-term strategy, not in place of urgent treatment. I say that because I have seen too many people waste precious time trying to negotiate with a crisis when their body was already screaming for help. So if you want the smartest way to use what you learned today, here it is. Start with one herb that actually fits your life. If you love tea, hibiscus is the obvious starting point. If you cook often, garlic and ginger may be easier. If bland food is your weakness, cardamom and celery seed can change compliance overnight. If you want quiet, modest support, cinnamon or black cumin may be worth discussing, especially in a broader metabolic plan. But whichever path you choose, pair it with lower sodium, better sleep, consistent measurements, and a doctor who knows exactly what you're taking. That combination is where the real power is. Not one herb, not one pill, a system. And when you put those 7 together in your mind, a new picture appears. The answer was never pick an herb instead of a prescription or trust a prescription and ignore everything else. The answer is more mature than that, more useful than that. The answer is to understand leverage. What lowers pressure a little? What lowers it more? What makes healthy food sustainable? What reduces the need for excess sodium? What helps arteries behave better? What fits your life so well that you'll still be doing it 3 months from now, after the motivation surge is gone? That is how people actually win with blood pressure. Not through drama, through repeatable leverage. So here's your takeaway. Don't let anyone convince you that your only role is to wait for the next pill adjustment while ignoring the everyday forces shaping your arteries. Respect medication when it's needed. Respect the body enough to support it broadly. Respect these plants enough not to use them carelessly. And above all, respect patterns over promises. Because patterns are what determine where your blood pressure will be next month, next year, and 5 years from now. If this video helped you think differently about what's possible, share it with someone who checks their numbers with fear instead of understanding. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.